Everyone, welcome to that Bible Guy. How should Christians share the gospel? If you're anything like me, it can get very complicated sometimes thinking about what am I supposed to say? In what way should I say it? How's it going to be received? And as time goes on and we think about it too much, you can find yourself not saying anything and not really wanting to share the gospel. Well, I really believe that the scriptures are written. Paul is written this morning here, we're going to see, in a way that he wanted to remind the Christians this is what you need to think about when sharing the gospel. What should we share when we're sharing the gospel? And I want us to remind us of three things this morning about what we should think about when sharing the gospel. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, brothers, I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you. I want to remind you of this gospel I preached to you. He then goes on and says in verse 3, for what I received I passed on to you as of first importance that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures. The first thing is, remember that our message is encouraging. Our message is positive. Our message brings life. It is life-changing, in fact. As Paul said, what I received I passed on to you of first importance. Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures. He's on to talk about being buried and resurrected, but he died for our sins. Our message, the gospel, good news, is to say that Jesus died for our sins. When we think about sharing, we think about how we should share. What is our message to this group or that group? How do I get through? How do I not get through? We must remember that our message is full of good news. Whether how we receive it is irrelevant, it is actually encouraging. It is good news. Remember how you felt when you were given good news to share and how encouraging it was to pass that on. Firstly of all, we must remember that our message is encouraging. It's that Jesus died for everyone's sins. The second thing is also mentioned here as well. It says in verse 4 that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures, and that he appeared to Peter and then to the 12. So the second thing that we must remember here is that the message itself, the good news, is based on historical fact. Christianity, the good news, the gospel, is historically factual, and we can find it out and have that verified by historical witnesses. I love what Paul says here about the gospel. He says that, I'll pass this on to you as the first importance, the gospel, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures. He was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures, appeared to Peter, and then to the 12 after that, appeared to more than 500 of their brothers. Some are asleep, some are still alive. Check out the details. Here's 500 people that Jesus appeared to. He died on a cross. We can have this historically verified by many historical accounts, including non-Christian accounts, Cephas, and many others that confirm that Jesus died on the cross. So we can check out the details that Jesus was in fact killed, died on the cross, and that many, many witnesses attest to him being resurrected. So what does this mean? It means it's not just a myth, an old wives' tale, or something that someone passed down through the generations that cannot be verified, that can't be looked into and studied and checked out to see are the details correct. Remember, as we share the gospel, it's a message that's based on historical fact. That is easily something that we can forget. And the last thing to remember that we'll see in the passages here is that the message that is all good news, that's based on historical fact, was predicted ahead of time. So it says that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures. Paul repeatedly says this. He's saying the gospel is good news that Jesus died for our sins. It's based on historical events that factually took place, that we can verify, that took place. And not only that, but this gospel and this message based on historical fact was actually predicted ahead of time according to the scriptures. The scriptures as we have today, the Old Testament, we can go back into the Old Testament and see that there are many prophecies about Jesus coming to earth as a man, dying on the cross, how he would be treated specifically, how he would be buried, and then he was actually raised from the dead also. We can actually check this out. I shared with my daughter this morning that Dead Sea Scrolls confirmed that the Old Testament manuscripts were dated well within hundreds of years before Jesus came. And they specifically talk about how he was going to live, die, and rise again, as it says here, according to the scriptures. So what do we need to remember when we think about how should we Christians share the gospel? Three things I really think we need to remember, and I really want to remind myself. Remember that the gospel is good news. It's all an encouraging message. It's that Jesus came to remove the sins, the guilt, and all that comes with that from every man and woman in the world. Remember also that the message is based on historical fact, and its veracity can also be checked out. Remember that the message of Jesus coming and dying was predicted ahead of time. We remember those things and we think about, what am I supposed to share? Why should I share this? We remember just how incredible the gospel is and why Paul felt the need to remind his followers. I need to pass this on and remind you again. I hope this helped us today. If it did, hit the like button. Please share it on for other people. Please subscribe to That Bible Guy, and let's get his word out there.